Anyway, well, thank you all for agreeing to join us today. Obviously, what you saw the note I sent out over the weekend. I think that really covers what we want to go through. The three key things will be how confident developers are when choosing the suppliers they're working with. And both Maurice and Tom have a number of projects between them. And it's really, how you and your colleagues, what your view is of the supply marketplace, whether that's by country or by individual suppliers and consultants for that matter. But especially, how my personal view is that the last 3 months and the current sort of period, the next 6 weeks, are okay. Okay, most suppliers have a cash cushion. Many governments across Europe, in fact, across the world, have helped their companies in their countries. If you see the list of who the British government have helped, it's disgusting. 600 million to Chanel, for example. I don't understand. Some of this is ridiculous. However, there has been good government assistance. What's going to happen though when that ends? What's going to happen when the money, the furlough scheme ends, companies' cash cushions, if you want, have been exhausted? And I think that the period that we're going to talk about is really from now. It's more the latter part of this year, and if you want, maybe 3 or 6 months into next year. We all have projects underway that fall into that category, and it's just about the confidence we have, the confidence you have in dealing with that. The second part will be just then the relationships with suppliers and how best, to continue those relationships with those suppliers that you have confidence with, because it's long-term relationships. And both Massimo and Stefano both have had that with clients for many years. And then also what government support is available. And Massimo's previously mentioned things like Cinque Stelle, which I think is more the Italian government taking ownership and swapping funds for shares in certain companies.
Well, that's at the time being, they are just speculations.
Okay. It's full of speculations.
It's a lot of speculations. They have to remain speculations,
right,
unless things move to a wrong direction.
Okay, but I think from what I can hear, a lot of Italian suppliers are going to remain open during August.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think they need to make up what they've had before.
They have project. That's the problem. Yeah. If they have project, for sure they have to stay open. In Italy, just Daniel, sorry to interrupt you. Okay. Here in northern Italy, people is very easy to tell people to work in August. Understand? We are work addicted, so we have to work all time. We work. It's not a major problem. You understand?
Yeah, well, is right. I mean, the idea for most of the companies is to stay open in August. We as Contardi will stay open. Then at the end of the day, as you know, the cost of labor in Italy is very high. So if a company finds himself without any order, they might decide to shut down instead of staying open. But the idea is to stay open. We will stay definitely open. But 1 week, it's a Ferragosto week.
Yeah.
Is a kind of a must.
That's around the 14th.
It's the 15th. This year is the 15th.
No, more than a mass, Massimo. The problem is everybody's closed. Everyone is closed, so you cannot have anything. It's impossible to stay open for that week.
We have
Maurice. Now, Maurice has a project currently in Rome.
Yeah, lucky him. one of the worst place to work at the moment, Rome.
Well, how are you finding that?
No, it's actually. We obviously struggled during the actual lockdown, and we were sort of delayed the shutdown of the construction site for as long as possible. and we're just sort of following the day-to-day guidance from the government and from our health and safety officer. And then, yeah, we did have to shut down the site eventually, and closed it under force majeure, which was, you know, a new experience for all of us. You know, even the very seasoned construction guys on the project that, you know, have been in construction for 40, 50 years, all said, you know, they've never ever triggered a force majeure clause in any construction contract. So it's definitely been challenging. And then, you know, when everything started to calm down, I think we've been fortunate enough that the Italian government has treated construction similar to manufacturing.
Yeah, true.
And factories, and therefore we've sort of, you know, started up again in early or mid-May. We then had to sort of rebuild some additional health and safety features within our site to comply with the additional regulations. But yeah, since then we've been going strong. So, you know, we wouldn't necessarily agree, Stefano, with it being the worst place. I mean, there's certainly, you know, always.
No, but I'm talking generally speaking, Rome is not a good place. Not before of the COVID, but generally speaking, in the last 2 years, you know, the last 2 years, you know, with the new major that we have, this 5 Stelle major, you know, Rome is becoming real. I have friends in Rome, but they are really, you know, they feel like to be not in Italy, but in the third world. That's what I mean. So they say is dangerous. The roads are terribly. They don't care about the street. Every you know, is not a nice place to be at the moment. Rome. It will come. We don't know when, but at the moment, you know, Milano before the COVID was the place to be. Everybody wants to buy house in Milano and blah blah blah, and whatever. Not in Rome, because Rome was losing a lot of tourists.
There's a lot of hotel development in Rome.
Yeah, lots of it. I mean, we think Rome is great. You know, it's still, you know, look at all the great features that you have. Lots of visitors come to Rome. Leisure is very popular. For sure, you know, Milan is you know, the economic capital and drives a lot of business in that way. But, you know, we think Rome has a bright future, actually.
No, I'm very pleased that you are telling this about Rome. But, you know, I have many friends in Rome as an architect. They are really, you know, they have problem in working in Rome due to the public permission. Whatever, everything is more difficult in Rome than Milano. You understand? That's the problem. And but it's true that I know everybody knows that Rome is one of the best places to be for the weather, for the places, whatever. But it's not easy to work there. You know, there are some new hotel coming.
Actually, because we've been talking earlier, I think quite a few people have actually joined us, because I'm getting quite a few messages through. So we thought we were just having a little chat amongst ourselves, but we're very happy to others have joined. So I'm just going to start. So first of all, let me introduce our panelists and guests today. We have Maurice Petignat from CEDA, and you're currently online from Switzerland.
Yeah. Hi guys.
Lucky you. Is Switzerland.
Tom Chalmers, who's joining us in London on behalf of both Eden and the owner and developer of the Lock properties. Hi, Tom.
Hey, how you doing?
Stefano Ronchetti from Maserati Ronchetti in Cantu in northern Italy.
Yes.
A supplier of very beautiful and specialist furniture for all types of commercial, including hospitality projects. And Massimo Brigandi from Contardi Lighting in Milan, a very beautiful home you have with lots of different light fittings behind you, a lovely manufacturer and supplier of lighting specifically for hospitality. And so thank you all. Thank you very much for joining us. The first thing I saw this morning was there was a poll put on by the organisers of this event that asked what you were wearing, and the options included: I'm still in my pajamas. I have work clothes on the top half and pajamas on the bottom half, or nothing at all. So I'm hoping that most people, that actually 30% of people still said they were wearing pajamas, either totally or in the bottom half. So I'm hoping that by this time today, most of us are fully clothed. I'm not asking for any visual proof, but thank you. Thank you for joining. And we do only have one poll that will come up through our event, through our discussion this morning. But what we really want to talk about with these 4 guests is how to protect how a developer, and we have 2 great developers here on our panel today. How does a developer protect their FF&E supplier? How do we make sure, how does the industry make sure that funds are paid out properly? Because we all know in our industry, we do talk about deposit payments, stage payments, and in many cases, payment prior to collection, which some people find quite difficult, especially at challenging times, to accept. But how do we keep the wheels of our machine working over the next 6 months and 12 months? Because inevitably, there are going to be some difficult months ahead. There are going to be cash flow difficulties. There are going to be projects that have extended by 3 months or 6 months due to closures on site. This is inevitable, we know that, but how are we going to get through that? What experience and advice can our panel bring forward? And of course, any of the guests watching are very welcome to send in messages via the chat function, and I'll introduce that into the group. So, you know, these are going to be challenging times. So let's just start with Maurice. I mean, how do you feel about the industry standard of 50% deposit, 50% prior to dispatch? Does that still work for you?
Look, I mean, I would say quite honestly, we've never been a fan of that, and obviously, you know, the more challenging the times are, the harder it is to pay people up front. I think because there are real risks of like you've said, bankruptcies, defaults of companies over the next 6 to 12 months for sure. That being said, I think it's sort of a tightrope you have to balance on, and I think, you know, it's about relationships and about clear and regular communication with those suppliers, to make sure that they don't run into difficulties either, in terms of, you know, if the cash flows are stopped, that's exactly what triggers the defaults. And, you know, obviously as a client developer, you don't want to be the one person that doesn't pay, and all the others do, and at the same time you don't want to be the person that triggers a bankruptcy because it punishes, you know, everyone then. So it's yeah, I think it's all about communication, and transparency is key from the suppliers, that they sort of communicate openly with us in terms of where they are about production. But generally speaking, not much has changed in that regard. I think, you know, we negotiate our payment terms with each supplier individually based on, you know, the size of the company, the relationship we have with them, also the type of product they're manufacturing. Some products are more capital intensive up front, etc. I'm sure, you know, Tom will agree.
Yeah. How's it been on site, Tom? I mean, are either contractors or subcontractors asking for, you know, help to get them through this period? Or are you letting them fight that battle on their own?
Well, I mean, not to deflect it straight back to you, Daniel, but I mean, I guess, you know, I agree with most of the points Maurice just mentioned. I think a few key things kind of came up as I was thinking about it. I think the first thing is, you know, we go through primarily Benjamin West as a procurement agent. So I think we try to put a lot of the onus on the procurement company, whether it's yourselves or somebody else in the European market. to help us navigate some of the complexities, because, you know, we're working with 20, 30, 40, 50 different vendors per site potentially. So if we do it ourselves, it's not going to be very time efficient. So I think what we try to do is we do lean on relationships a lot. I think, you know, there's pre-COVID, there's 4 or 5 companies we've worked with on locks who are repeat vendors for us, whether it's joinery or FF&E. And we know that those are established relationships. We have, you know, very, very good intimate knowledge of the business practices of those companies. So we're very comfortable with a deposit payment or with an upfront agreement. I think if a new company comes into the picture over the course of the summer or this year, we're probably going to do a lot more due diligence than we would have done in the past on those companies before we place any orders or put any faith in. So I guess in a slightly negative sense, it's probably a lot better to work with people we have in the past, and probably the new guys on the block are going to find it a bit more difficult, I think, to work with us and other companies because you're taking a small risk there. And I think the last thing is it probably just depends on the complexity. I mean, with a lock, Daniel, you know, we have a lot of quite complex fixed joinery items which will go through the FF&E procurement groups. That's a big lump sum down payment, but they have a lot of work to do beforehand in terms of mock-ups. The smaller scale stuff, the OS and E, you know, we'll use whoever we need to use who's best placed in the market cost-wise. So it really depends on the scale of it. But our relationships are going to be key, and past relationships that have been built up over the last few years are going to reap benefits, I think, for a lot of suppliers over the next 12 months.
So, I mean, Massimo, Italy is famous for having long-standing relationships between suppliers and customers. But how far are they pushing you in terms of being either changing your financial terms, or are they being supportive where they can?
Well, Daniel, flexibility is one of the key words in our industry. So now I think that flexibility is a must. Is more than ever. Flexibility in everything, you know, including the payment terms. You mentioned that nowadays we have to really focus, you know, on relationship. Actually, it was Maurice say relationship is a key. And he's right, he's absolutely right. It's easy somehow for a company like Contardi, and I assume for most of companies, to deal with people they have been dealing for long and rely on them, try to do the best to help them, because helping them means help each other. We have to help each other. So if we are flexible, now we are all completely fed up of protocols. We have been under protocols for the last 3 months, 4 months. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. So I wouldn't work on a protocol for changing terms. I would just speak honestly and try to find a compromise, which is definitely reachable. If a company is in good conditions with a lot of you know, trust on what the company does and what the client can provide, it's not going to be a big deal. Then changing 50-50 into something else, well, it has been happening in the past 5 years already. Very rarely we've been paid 50-50. We never ask 50-50. I mean, we really don't do that. We ask 30% in advance as maximum, because I mean, lights are one of the last things, you know, and they're quite fast. Let's say quite fast to get. Yet there is a progress payments are going to be, I think, the future, and mutual trust and flexibility. So that's how I see.
But I think Italians are used to slower payment terms. I mean, we've recently completed a project where payment terms were 10% deposit, but payable 90 days later.
Yeah.
Balance upon delivery, payable 90 days later. So in Italy, payments of 120 days, 150 days, Stefano, is not unusual.
That's why we don't work in Italy. That's one of the reasons.
and it's hard, you know. But I think elsewhere, certainly in the FF&E industry, in the interiors industry, across most of Europe, certainly most of the US, most of the Americas, it's the same, you know. And clients are going to find it more difficult, and the relationships, those long-standing relationships that Tom talks about, are going to be ever more important. And then what happens, Maurice, when somebody comes along, or Tom, and says, you know what, I'm going to make you a special offer. Okay, normally this package would be 100,000 euros. We're prepared to, you know, we're bidding 60. Or
I mean, red light immediately for me. I think, you know, we all know it's too good to be true, right? I think, you know, if it's somebody, if it's a trusted supplier, I'd be concerned about their business and issues with their viability. If it's a new supplier, I can potentially see why they might offer some discount for the first project. But yeah, it'd be a warning sign for me. And I don't think we'd aggressively pursue that. I think we want to understand why. Too good to be true. It's always the case.
Maurice, are you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think these times, especially over the next few months, I think, you know, the deals will slow, and I think there will be suppliers that are, you know, chasing deals simply to cover cost, to keep their business alive, basically. And, you know, there may be bigger discounts to be had, and, you know, everyone is saying the cost of construction over the next 12 to 18 months should actually come down, and that's one of the reasons, because, you know, there's going to be the same amount of contractors and suppliers chasing less projects, which, you know, it's just a fact.
Yeah, I think it's go on.
No, I think it's a good point. I think especially in hard cost construction, I think we'll see some substantial savings. Hopefully, towards the end of the year, because, you know, like the property market, I think we're all at a very high point. I'd be curious. I think, just to go back to your initial point, Daniel, I think we all expect quite a big bump in the road when all the furlough schemes and the government funding stops, you know, in the fall, October, November time. And then obviously if there's a second wave of coronavirus, then we're kind of back to square one to some extent. So, you know, I think there's going to be an interesting point at the end of the year where we'll see potentially some very, very large savings. But I also believe that towards the start of next year, we'll hopefully see a slow climb up.
Well, I mean, the very first presentation this morning from Tom Emanuel at STR showed some very interesting graphs. But, you know, look, in terms of what the recovery is, in case actually Switzerland has seen 80% hotel occupancy over the last 2 weekends, which is great. Either that's people, many locals, but also people able to drive there from France or Italy, Germany. But actually, you getting back into the swing of utilizing those hotels that are open. Of course, they're not all open, but 80% of those that are covered under STR's research are showing good occupancy. So that's positive. And this whole event today is called Restart. And, you know, Britain and France have both today relaxed significantly their restrictions, business restrictions for individuals, for companies. So today hopefully is a big restart for, you know, a significant part of Europe. And, you know, Greece, Cyprus, Spain, you know, these countries are almost not wholly, but they're significantly dependent upon hospitality. So hopefully the restart is for everybody. But there are, as Tom mentioned, I think there are going to be some fairly hard times ahead later this year and early into next year before it really improves. I mean, Stefano, are people challenging you more on pricing or more on payment terms? Which is
No,
as usual.
At the moment, no. But I don't know if they know exactly. We're a little bit different from the other because we do specific project for a hotel and restaurant, you know, in the area where we're talking about hotel and restaurant, where we do shops or private home. But you know, between me and you, Daniel, we know each other from, unfortunately, from many years. Unfortunately, because we it's long time we are working. You know, it's in the last 5, 8, 10 years. You know, is the problem of getting paid is becoming not a big issue for us, because, for example, one time 10 years ago, if you do a villa in sometimes, you know that we do also private home in Milano, and we ask 40% advance payment, 30% when design were ready, 30% the installation. 10 years ago, we say, hey, Stefano, thanks, I have a lot of options. Now, you know, client, you know, are so happy to pay, also avoiding, you know, when we talk about Middle East, China, we did a big project in Macau. I asked 97% before leaving, and they say, okay, it's fine, no problem. So I don't have really, you know, or I lose some project because they don't, I am not in the budget because we are considered like expensive, or as soon as they have set my price, I don't have any kind of problem in term of payment. You understand? I give my normal term of payment that are not, you know, very helpful for the client. But the client is not telling me, no, can you change your term of payment? That could be 50% deposit, 50% before delivery. I'm doing a project now in Seoul, the same, you understand? The project, the condition, normal term of condition are these. And the Seoul client, the Korean client say, okay, that's fine. So working, it was more difficult before, but also in London, you know, I started working in London in 1992 with you, 20 years ago. You know, in London,
30 years ago.
In London, I don't ask this kind of term of condition, you understand, because clearly we are more flexible, and UK people are the best client ever from my point of view. But you know, normally they only touch wood. The last problem that I have in the last 4 or 5 years is the payment. You know, when people order, or a developer or a private or whatever, when order, he pays. You understand?
But Stefano, let me hold on. I understand the last few years, and I understand your love of working in London because, you know, generally it's simple and straightforward. But are you saying that as a supplier, and this is to you especially as well, Massimo, as a supplier, how do you feel as much confidence in the developer client community that you're supplying to? How do you feel about only taking a smaller deposit or waiting longer? Do you feel that there's some difficulty? Are you concerned about customer side over the next 12 months?
Well, Daniel, it's a matter of culture. The payment is the natural conclusion of a deal. And you were mentioning that in Italy we are used to long terms, long payments, and sometimes that's a doubt about if it's happening or not. And the rest of the world, the payment is a natural conclusion of the deal. So I'm not concerned in working with our partners, not at all. As I said before, it's a matter of flexibility, of mutual needs. No, I'm not. I'm more concerned instead to enter in a loop, in a general loop, which I do not expect from the people we can call clients or the big players. I'm more concerned to enter in a loop where, you know, the clients will try to take advantage, as you were mentioning before, or of the huge possibility to have access to suppliers who may offer crazy terms because they need to survive. Probably. If that is happening, that will definitely affect companies that are more solid, that are more, let's say, financially healthy or stable, because we will continue to keep the same attitude, the same professional approach. We consider the payment as a part of the deal. If the client and the partner ask me to help him with better payment terms, I'm happy to do so if I can do that. As well as I will tell the client, listen, if you can help me with that, instead of the 20%, can we make it 30% in advance? Or if you ask me, can we do 10% to start? If I can afford it, I will tell you yes. I will tell you yes, because I trust I trust this core business.
I mean, what I've discussed with Tom and Maurice before, and any client, is it's not even so much the money that I think a developer might lose with a supplier. If there's a 50,000 euro order and something goes wrong with the supplier, it's not the 25,000 you may have paid in deposits or stage payments. It's the fact of what's it going to do to your development.
Exactly.
If you can't open, that's worth way more than just the cash of a lost deposit. That we can get over. But if it's an element that's actually going to stop a room from opening, and you've got 160 room property, and it's going to be 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks late because of that one order that was placed 8 months ago with a company that made a very, very commercially beneficial offer, but actually couldn't stand by it. I mean, surely, Tom, that's going to be the biggest issue for you as a developer.
Yeah, no, 100. I was just thinking the same thing, actually. I think got a lot of faith in a lot of our suppliers, whether it's lighting or whether it's a piece of furniture within the factory, right? I think they can build it. It's controlled. We can go and visit the site. We can look at the mock-ups. It's all fine. We have a lot of confidence in that. I think actually we have to get the product to the site, warehouse, delivered, installed, and for me, that's probably one of the bigger risks going forward, because a lot of the delivery and warehousing, they have subcontractors. That's quite a large portion of the cost. If they go down, they have to retrain people, etc., etc. So I think I guess to answer your question, it's not necessarily confidence in the product. It's actually confidence in getting the product into the room on time, and without any breakages or additional costs. That's the big risk, because like you say, if it's delays opening by 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, then you can quadruple the money that you've saved previously on that 60% discount.
But
yeah, I mean, you mentioned.
Sorry, Daniel, can I tell you something quickly? Hello.
We're here, Stefano. Don't worry.
Yeah. No.
We just lost your photograph, but I just want to pick up on something Tom said, which is about warehousing. And Maurice, you have a project currently going on in Rome. There's obviously a few months delay due to site conditions and local conditions generally.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of product that's now in storage.
Oh, yeah.
All over Europe, there's product being held up in warehouses. Warehouses are becoming quite full with products held not just obviously for building sites and hotel projects, but for all industries. So there is a concern in terms of how best to manage that and how best to pay for that. And it's important, again, to make sure that it's held within proper warehousing conditions, and not left outdoors, just covered by a piece of tarpaulin. And
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've had to push out productions wherever possible, and again, we've been very well supported in negotiating with some of our key suppliers to even negotiate warehousing locally, where oftentimes the suppliers, the bigger they are, they actually have their own facilities, and they can house a lot of product themselves. In the interim, some of the product that we've manufactured, we've even been able to pause and squash in another project in between, before the supplier then continues with with our manufacturing, because we only need it, you know, three months later. So, you know, and to Massimo's earlier point, it's very, very key for our suppliers, actually, the flexibility. So, you know, flexibility, and I think transparency is absolutely essential for us. If a supplier, you know, is transparent with us, can tell us, you know, we've finished production, you know, and I think the IT, you know, digital, as digital as all of this has become, it's been great, because it's helped a lot to, you know, see actual product. A picture always says more than 1,000 words. If I can see that our lamps have been made in the factory, or I can see that our sofas have been produced, I feel a lot more comfortable than if I just hear, you know, that they're in production, and, you know, they'll be delivered then and then. So yeah, but to your point with warehousing, I think it's a trade-off. On one hand, you want to get your product actually into the warehouse where you control it as early as possible, and on the other hand, it's a matter of cost. You know, can you negotiate with the supplier to house some of your product free of charge for an extra 2-3 months, which is excellent, and you save yourself warehousing, because obviously the logistics companies, you know, they don't work for free.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a trade-off between those two.
But also, you know, moving goods away from the supplier's premises and into a local warehouse, if you want, near the project site, giving you as a developer greater control of the product. Absolutely. Again, that's part of the same balance.
Sure.
And you know, these are the commercial realities of the next, you know, 8 to 10, 12 months, definitely. So, but Massimo, one of the points you raised earlier was about payment terms, and we're often asked by developers, why don't you have a bank guarantee? Which suppliers will offer a bank guarantee to support their production? And Maurice, you're smiling because it's the sort of question you would ask us. And the reality is the interiors industry, or the loose FF&E industry, generally doesn't follow that route. It does under construction or subcontractors, and Stefano will have worked many projects through bank guarantees, but not for loose items. However, I think you have now set up that facility for clients.
Well,
Massimo.
Daniel, you remember me and you had a chat months ago when we were still in lockdown, and at that time we had no real awareness of when the lockdown would have ended in Italy. There was very contradictory information. And you remember that I raised the issue, you know, because I mentioned flexibility. I also mentioned that my main focus, if one point is a concern, the other side is a focus and is an objective, is to create a very strong relationship between the supplier and the client, being part of the same coin. And in fact, in this uncertainty, the fears for the credit and the financial stability of the companies, myself, I sent out a letter to the biggest players and clients saying that Contari is willing to provide bank guarantees to the clients, because I offered that instead of being asked if we can provide it. Because again, we are in a market that in the last years have been affected by the globalization. Globalization is a great thing, but also has a lot of difficulties in between. One of that was the real impossibility to keep relationship. So it was a crazy loop where, you know, the last offer was the best offer, whatever it was, wherever it came from. Now we need to become solid. We need to create a relationship. So of course, a bank guarantee is something that makes sense, because it's not that I can look at from our side only. How a client can rely on this situation when a company can disappear in 2 months to pay a deposit of whatever, 10,000 or 100,000 euros, and then the company doesn't have enough money to pay the salaries. So to ask for a bank guarantee, it's going to be part of the flexibility that now is required. I offer to a bank guarantee reasonable terms where Contardi is paying for the cost of the bank guarantee. I'm not asking the client to pay the bank guarantee. Of course, I'm because it covers their interest, it covers my interest. In terms of payment terms, we also are happy to use a letter of credit. Same thing, because again, it's more important to be all protected. This is a protection that we provide our clients, and in the same time, we protect ourselves.
Maurice,
if the clients rely on us, it's a protection.
So Maurice, I mean, how do you feel about the possibility of companies generally, those that are able to set up and offer bank guarantees? Because I said our industry generally doesn't do it when it comes to loose products, but those that offer it, is that going to put them out? Is that going to put them far ahead in your consideration?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's definitely something that I see coming. And Massimo, as you've said, in the next maybe 6 months, it's going to be a cost to you. As soon as it becomes standard practice, which I think is a matter of time, because of this uncertainty, and it just builds trust, gives confidence to the client that you're going to be able to deliver the product, which, as Tom said, is the most important thing to us, is that we get our hotels open. And so I think in the long run, it's going to be passed on. The cost will be able to be passed on to the clients, who should also pay for that, because it's a risk.
I mean, we've had a poll running during our session, which was how many suppliers might struggle financially over the next 12 months. And at the moment, 80% of people think that at least 1 in 5 will struggle and may fail. And in fact, a quarter of people think that at least more than a third of those companies will struggle and fail, which is an unfortunate.
How many? What? 20% of the company will suffer, they say?
No, that 80% of people believe that at least 1 in 5 companies
1 in 5,
will struggle. And in fact, it's there is the very few people think that all of our supply network, which we utilize and have relationships with for many years, that not everyone is going to make it through. So it is a concern for everybody. It's a concern for us, for our colleagues, because we see the supply network as this is our industry and our colleagues. But the inevitable reality is that not everyone either has enough cash available to see them through, or their costs are too high, or there just aren't enough projects to keep everybody. But by the way, this is not the first time this has ever happened. As Stefano said, he and I may have worked together for nearly 30 years, so we've seen downturns previously. This may be for a different reason, but there's always a slight clearing out. There's a slight, and there will always be a flight to quality, because people want to be safe with who they are working with. And as Tom said, they're not going to rush. Developers would be ill-advised to rush for the least expensive offer, or an unusually inexpensive offer, because that's not really going to help. But are you concerned, Tom, by the number of companies that are financially unable to support themselves?
It's definitely a concern, especially like Maurice said, if it affects opening, that's always the end target, and that's what the whole deal's based upon. So I think that's a clear issue that would come up. I think for me personally, I think for for the brands we're working with, we try to be as unique in our positioning as possible. Yeah, I'm not trying to kind of market lock here, but I think, with less suppliers, especially, maybe kind of younger generations or younger suppliers who come on the market, gives us less choice and less authenticity for the brand. So I guess there's the practical concerns which I have, which is just about affecting openings and costs, etc. But there's also, I think, in terms of hospitality design, there's a concern there that it limits the market, limits the amount of choice that we have potentially as well.
And Stefano, do you? How do you feel in Italy?
I'm going a little bit. I'm telling something strange, because as you know, Daniel, I don't know if the other people know exactly. We do special projects, so nothing by catalog, but just special, especially architectural, metal and glass and now wood work, quite expensive. And so, in the last years, I didn't have this kind of. I used to have more before, but now it seems paradoxal, it's strange. But before, I have people asking discount, delayed term of payment, whatever. Now, for example, I did today, this morning, before getting with you, I did a deal, not a big one, in Beirut, and the architect lives between Beirut and Milano, and I sent the offer this last Friday, and this morning is not. They are piece of art, let's say, are pieces in a private house, and the architect told me, okay, Stefano, I think I'm submitting you this proposal of term of payment, delivery mid-September, okay. And term of payment could be good if we do 50% now and 50% before shipping. Say, yes, thanks. But
that's a nice way to start your Monday morning.
Yeah, but I will tell you, when he's a really talented architect, but it's the first time they came to me. So I know them just because me and you, because we know everyone. But they called me, say, can you tender this piece?
Thanks.
And when I start tender these things, I am a little bit scared. We are talking about 120,000 euro. We're not talking about, but bespoke. You understand? Just I have to start from zero, from a sketch to the, and they say, do you mind? Can I offer? Can I suggest you that our normal term of payment, because I think it's a very rich Lebanese client, is a private client. Say normally the client pays 50% advance payment and 50% before shipping. Is it good for you? Say, but why not? We can, But she didn't ask me, not because normally Lebanese people are very well known to try to fight any euro. In this case, but we are quite lucky. Also, in the big project in Macau, I told you, I sent the quotation, and I told to a friend of mine that live in Hong Kong, but used to work in London, Asian face. They say, Michael, please, I make you the offer, but please don't start telling me that, because I sent to the 4-5 different GC. Don't tell me I don't want to, but the GC call me back telling, in China I have something cheaper, in China I have something like costs less than you. Say, no, I send the price. Say, okay, fine, let's go. It's quite.
So I want to ask you. Thanks, Stefano. I want to ask just an interesting point come up. What about opportunities? What about opportunities for Tom? Some of those smaller producers, the smaller, innovative, young companies, to actually approach some of the larger, more established, let's say, someone like Massimo, and say, look, I need some investment, I need some support. I think there is something for all of us to be said for being a broker between some of those smaller companies that actually have really great ideas and values and potential, and actually trying to introduce them to some other companies who have some either additional marketing or additional support. There have to be opportunities in any crisis for new buds to flourish. And I think we have a responsibility to try and help that to happen.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
you see it from both as a designer and a designer that's specifically working as a developer. You have lots of opportunities. And, I think, Maurice, we would like to support those companies that are having difficulties. You said before about transparency. And if a supplier comes and says, look, I'm having a difficult situation, can you help us find a way to get through? I think we'd all be happy to try to broker something that would enable everyone to be, to see the way through. We don't want to stifle creativity. We want to try and encourage it.
Yeah.
Massimo, would you be willing to help some smaller lighting designers, manufacturers with your expertise?
Well, again, yes, absolutely, yes. We have to create a solid group of work. We have to be open. We have to help each other. We have to support each other. This is the only chance we have, because emergency brings opportunities besides the difficulties, and the opportunities are an evidence, at least a little evidence. For instance, now we are talking to each other. I have in front of me, apart from you, Daniel and Stefano, I have two clients, two people that I rarely have the chance to talk to, because we do lights, and we go through the designer, and then we go through you. And you touched before a critical point, which is about the storing, keeping the goods in the warehouse. That's a very critical point. And because I am myself concerned when I have to ship the goods that will stay for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months in outside logistics. We never know who deal with them, who touches them, how many times they move the pallets per day. And then, what means to be squeezed in between, because whose fault is that if then, they find the goods in 2 pallets completely broken and damaged. So it's nobody's fault at the end. So what is going to happen, what I wish could happen, that from every side, your side is the side we rely on, we trust. You can call me, and I know if you ask me, it's a guarantee. But at the same time, from our client, to be open and ask us if we can help. Can you keep it in your warehouse for 3 months? Do you need to charge? If I don't need to charge, I don't charge. Very, very, it's so easy, so evidence, transparency. Same with smaller companies. Smaller companies in lighting, they may need an umbrella, they need somebody who can provide an expertise, who can provide that kind of assistance in maybe dealing internationally, because language is a barrier. But the barrier nowadays of the language is a very small one. It's more a barrier not to be used to payment terms, to letter of credit, bank guarantees, or maybe to be, used to work on molds. Now is not the product, is the service. Because if it is a product, you can go everywhere. Everywhere. You can turn around the world, and if we go to Asia, we suffered already enough in Europe because of Asia. So it's not the product, it's really the service. I need to guarantee for myself that I'm here, and for my clients, sorry, that I'm here from now for the next 50 years, whatever. And the same I can do if somebody else, a smaller company, cannot give this guarantee because they.
Well, I hope you're personally not sat there in 50 years still.
No, in fact, I'm sorry. that was a real, let's say, mistake. Can I call it translation?
100 anni.
No.
I made note as well, Massimo. I'll give you a call straight after this to negotiate the storage of our lights for Rome. Is that right?
Okay. So listen,
it's something that we can definitely agree on without any. It doesn't take too long. It doesn't really take any long.
Okay. Well, look, given the fact that, as I said, that the restrictions both in Britain and in France have lifted today, we're hopefully all beginning to get out and able to see a few of our family, a few of our friends and work colleagues over the next few weeks. I wish everybody well. I thank everybody. I thank my panelists most of all, Maurice, Tom, Massimo, and Stefano. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And for everybody who's been, the number of people watching the session has been increasing all the way through. So sorry for any latecomers, but we've had a very interesting 45-50-minute chat. And thank you again. Hope you enjoy the rest of today's session.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Be well.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.